It's not if you can. Is there anyone?
راجر واترز بیش از 3 دهه همراه گروه پینک فلوید میلیون‌ها نفر را در سراسر جهان مسحور کرد با نوآوری‌های بیمانند در موسیقی، شعر و اجراهای زنده. واترز که این روزها بار دیگر آلبوم دیوار را روی صحنه برده، در فرصتی که میان کنسرت‌هایش پیش آمد، در نیویورک با تلویزیون فارسی BBC به گفتگو نشست.
Thank you very much, Roger, for having us. I'd like to start with asking you, how does it feel to have the Wall tour after 30 years?
Well, it feels good. We've been on the road since the middle of September, and we finished just before Christmas. We did 58 or 59 shows in Canada and the United States, and the last 3 in Mexico City. And the response has been fantastic, and the shows have been going very well. And I think people have responded to the fact that I've broadened and updated the show from the way it was when I did it with Pink Floyd in the late 70s and early 80s. It has a much broader philosophical and political context now than it did then. And so I couldn't be happier.
Well, when you first wrote The Wall, it was based on a personal and emotional experience, and the wall signifying a psychological barrier, correct me if I'm wrong. But later it evolved, as you mentioned, into a much broader context. Bringing in political, geopolitical, ideological elements into it. How did this evolution take place, and why, in your mind?
In the intervening years since 1979, I've realized that this can be seen as an allegory for the way that nations and religions and contrasting political ideologies deal with each other, and that that the powers that be who control our lives and control all the cash and control all the power and control our liberty and control everything, use fear of other as a way to control us all, and it's convenient for them, and I identify them, to encourage us to believe that these walls exist between us and them, based upon the fact that we were born in different places, or that we have different economic or philosophical or political ideologies to which we adhere, or religious probably the most important of all, and that if they can keep us at each other's throats, it is convenient for them, because then they can go on skimming all the cash off the top of the pile and keep themselves in enormous comfort. And it provides little opportunity for redress by the rest of the world, and so the wall as a symbol is extremely important now, because we get a chance to look at it from both sides, given the burgeoning of information technology and the sharing through the internet and through Facebook and through the different ways that there are now for people to communicate with one another across religious, political, national and ideological borders.
So the wall today still bears symbolic significance. I mean, it's what you say is more of a spiritual message to the people to tear down these walls that separate mankind, so to speak, and come together. It doesn't prescribe per se an ideological or political or economic doctrine or procedure.
You know, you and I now, sitting here now, may be part of the wall, or we may be part of what I would consider to be a good thing, which might be part of a movement to tear down a particular wall. That wall, I've lived in the United States for 11 years, and I see the mainstream media in this country as one of the most powerful walls that exists between we the people and our ability to experience the reality of our own lives. Because we are bombarded in North America every day with a message, and it's constant. And it's 2 or 3 pronged, it's like a trident, you know, and the message is, number 1, consume, number 2, be frightened of the other, of the foreigners, the evil ones, the whatever. And number 3, do as you're told. The power of the media, and particularly television in this country, is beyond anything that we can kind of comprehend, and I think it affects our lives enormously all the time. And it's something that needs to be dismantled.
So, if I remember correctly, back in 1992, you had the Amused to Death album, in which you almost mentioned exactly the same thing, that the humankind is going to amuse itself to death by TV culture. With the advent of all these new technologies that you mentioned, the internet, the reality TV, the Facebook, YouTube, do you think that is happening now? People are amusing themselves to death?
Call me an optimist if you like, but I cling to a certain sense that maybe those things are actually helping us. As we know, all information technology is a two-edged sword. It may help them to control us, or it may help us to free ourselves, or it may do a bit of both. A positive aspect would be allowing people of different nationalities, different religious experiences, different philosophical attachments and so on, to communicate with one another across the great chasm of religion and ideology and whatever, in order that they should see a future where it's more important for them to understand each other than it is for them to wipe each other out, or, you know, or kill each other, or whatever. Whereas over here, there are negative powers, in my view, that would like to use information technology to keep the oil companies strong. You know, here in North America, I sense, keep the people relatively quiet, so that by identifying outside enemies and so that they can keep this little club of 2% of people who own, you know, 70% of the wealth of the country intact and keeping going nicely without anybody really making any kind of fuss, by selling the people this notion that, well, you could be one of these 2%, wouldn't that be nice? So it's a very, very strange situation at the moment. And I'm very happy that I live in America, in a country where I won't be put in prison for saying this.
In your recent tour, there are pictures of casualties of war projected on the wall. Tell us how these pictures were chosen. What was the idea behind that, and how did you screen them?
When we started trying to put together the visual aspects of this show, I expressed my desire right at the outset to make it a more universal story and not just a story about me. Well, part of my story is that my father was killed 20th of February 1944 in the Anzio bridgehead in Italy, and that had a deep effect on my life. So one way to make the story broader is to say, well, lots of people have lost loved ones during wars and or political conflict of one kind or another, and they've all, in some way or another, experienced the same devastation and loss that I felt when I was a young child and still feel to this day. And so how can we include other experiences in the thing? So my team and I developed the idea that we would reach out through a web page and through Facebook to such audience as I had, and ask them to share with us stories and photographs of loved ones lost in war or in conflict.
So among those pictures, there's a picture of Neda Agha Sultan, a young Iranian woman who was shot dead during the demonstrations following the 2009 Iranian presidential elections. How did her picture come to be projected on the wall?
Somebody from Iran sent it to us.
I mean, was there a mechanism for screening them, to verifying or rejecting some pictures, or
Yeah.
just any pictures that
Yeah,
some of the relatives sent?
Yeah, but the screening was very simple. We didn't screen out or reject any pictures of anybody who had died in any war or in any conflict or political
From any
unrest.
side?
From anybody. You know, Gandhi's in there just because somebody sent Gandhi in and went. And as you say, Neda as well. We got so many Nedas sent into us. And it's interesting that you should bring her name up because it may be that without the internet and without my webpage and without Facebook and without this, nobody outside the few blocks on those few days of those riots in Tehran after that time would know anything about this woman.
Don't be surprised when a crack in the ice appears under your feet. You slip out of your depth and out of your mind with your fear flowing out behind you.
Clearly the regime in Iran would like to suppress all of that stuff and do the best that they can. And then maybe they're quite efficient at it, but nevertheless, some of that news gets out. And there's a kind of groundswell of opinion in the rest of the world in support of the protesters, because on the face of the evidence, and there isn't much, it's mainly anecdotal, it seems extremely likely that that election was totally corrupt. But because of the way the system works in Iran now, as far as I can judge, as an outsider looking in from the outside, we have A, no recourse to the law, but B, we have no way of finding out the information. There's no route to finding out who actually voted in that election and how many votes were cast and where they were cast, because it's all under the control of, a ministry of somebody. So we saw it in 2002 in this country when there was a fairly close election between the second Bush and Gore.
2000?
Yeah, 2000, where most informed opinion thinks that Gore got more votes and that it all hinged eventually on Florida, and then the Supreme Court, that had a 5-4 majority in favor of the Republicans, decided, well, Bush won the election. So this isn't a problem that's specific to Iran, though it does seem, from looking from the outside, as if there's not much chance of having free and fair elections in that country.
A few months ago, speaking of Iran, you also authorized